All right, this is Obaid on behalf of V Electronics, and in this video, we'll be talking about monetary policies and aggregate demand. So, in the last video, we talked about how the aggregate demand for financial capital goes up as you have a budget deficit, and the interest rates go up as well simultaneously. Okay, now to bring down the interest rates, one would argue as to why the government or the central bank in this case wouldn't use a monetary policy, and that would be a contractionary monetary policy. A contractionary monetary policy, if you remember from the last few videos, it does bring down the interest rates and shrink the economy, all right, which may lead to a recession. Okay, so even though it may lead to a recession, the aggregate demand for goods and services goes down. Okay, however, you have to consider that you have financial capital over here rather than goods and services. We're not talking about output, we're talking about investment in banks, for example. And this investment could come from domestic as well as international investors. All right, now the investment may be temporary or long term in nature. Okay, if it is long term in nature, the same investment can be used by the banks, okay, to lend out money to individuals for personal consumption, so personal consumption, plus businesses for capital investments, such as equipment, machinery, so on and so forth. Okay, and both of these they add to your GDP, gross domestic product, which means they bump their GDP up. Okay, however, as I mentioned earlier, okay, despite the fact that a contractionary policy, okay, may increase or reduce interest, okay, interest rates when it comes to goods and services, reduce the aggregate demand for goods and services. It does not necessarily reduce the aggregate demand for financial capital, which is independent from the output or production of goods and services. All right. So that would be it for this video. On behalf of V Electronics, this is Obey. Have yourself a great day.